Welcome back to Building Nebraska. It's a podcast for dreamers and doers alike, where we ignite your passion for entrepreneurship and showcase those who turn ideas into reality. This is a podcast produced by the Rural Radio Network, and we are powered by the Angler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program, which is located at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I am so excited about today's show as we are at Vala's Pumpkin Patch and Apple Orchard, seated right in between Lincoln and Omaha. The founder, Tim Vala, kind enough to sit down with us here as we're in one of your original barns. We can talk more about some of the history, but we go back 40 years. Mm-hmm. How did you start everything that has grown to what it is today?
Well, my first, when I spent like 2 or 3 years looking for land around Omaha and just in the metro area. And I was looking for bare ground. I wanted to put in like maybe a 5 to 10 acre you-pick strawberry patch. And so I was, I didn't have a farm background, so I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. I was, in retrospect, now that I think, I was looking at some pretty poor farm ground and thought, well, I could make it work, but no, it probably wouldn't have worked. I was fortunate to, when I came out here, I talked to the family that was living here at the time, and they were at their retirement age or getting near. They wanted to still farm for a few years. They lived in what is now our haunted house, but they lived in the house that's on the property, and they lived there for like 40 years themselves, and they were just wanted to get out and have a nicer house in their retirement. So they were going to move into Gretna to a nicer house, and it took about a year or so, and then they called me back up and said, "Hey, we're moving. Do you want to come out and talk about everything?" So that's kind of how we got started. I think one of the funny stories was I had a pickup truck, but I couldn't afford a 4-wheel drive pickup truck at the time. And so I had a 2-wheel drive. And when the first time I came out, I talked to the woman, the mom, I guess, or the wife, and Irma Landberg. And she kind of said, well, we probably wouldn't want to sell. So I went to leave. And I had no intentions on ever really probably coming back or anything, but as I went to leave, my truck became stuck. We just had a rain the night before, and it was just and anyone that has ever driven a pickup 2-wheel drive pickup truck knows how easy it is to get stuck. I mean, it's like there's nothing there, and your tires are spinning, and about that time, John Lambert came out, and he sowed seed corn and other things. So he was, he was just kind of busy guy, but he came out and said, "Well, what can I do you for?" I still always kind of remember how he said that, and I said, "Well, I'm stuck," and he goes, "Oh yeah," and well, here, let me see, And of course, as a good farmer, he got me out without having to pull. I was thinking he's going to need a tractor and a chain or do something or push and he goes, "No, turn your wheels this way and do this, not do that." And I just drove right out. And then I started talking to him. We probably talked for an hour and a half that day, and we just kind of hit it off, And then he kind of said that, well, you know what, we're thinking about maybe buying a house in Gretna sometime. And, well, like I said, it took about a year, and then we came out. And I was fortunate that he was willing to let me rent ground with the option to buy eventually. And so, because I really didn't have a lot of money to put down on land or anything. And so for a couple of years, we rented, I think, 17 acres at $100 an acre. I put 10 acres in vegetables and 7 acres in strawberries, and that's kind of how I got started. Didn't know a lot about farming. I always have a joke about, it's not really a joke, but just when I bought my first tractor, luckily it wasn't very far from here, and I didn't know how to get it out of first gear. And so I drove it all the way home in first gear, which is, most farmers know, that's 1 mile per hour, and that's pretty true. 3 miles away, it's like 3 hours.
Yeah. And what kind of tractor was that?
It was a Ford 4000.
Okay.
And what was weird, too, about it was it had a one-armed loader, which I've never seen one since. But, yeah, I just had one arm, and then, I don't know why they made it that way, but so it was a little bit unique tractor. So
let's go back as you're looking at different properties in the Omaha area to perhaps acquire and able to successfully do so. On the website, self-described perhaps, city boy in Omaha, Nebraska. What business, what were you doing prior to this to want to buy a farm, and what was your inspiration for going out there and knocking on doors?
Well, it's like I went to college at Nebraska Wesleyan in Lincoln and met my wife there. Neither one of us took any business classes or anything like that, which is, in retrospect, was maybe not the best. But anyway, my wife became a school psychologist, and I was a certified teacher. I just couldn't find a teaching job at the time, and it was pretty hard. I remember putting an application in, and there was 90 applicants for one job.
Wow.
And so. It's just very tough finding a job. And so I bounced around for about almost 10 years just doing different things. But I've always worked. Sometimes I had 2 jobs, but nothing I really wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I started thinking, well, maybe I had a college professor that told me one time that for me, because I didn't have I wasn't really dedicated to educate. I was like, would have liked it, probably would have loved my life as an educator, but it wasn't like the best thing in the world for, but he said I'd probably have to create my own job. And at the time, I just thought that sounded kind of stupid, and I didn't understand what he meant by that. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm thinking, like, I'm having a heck of a time finding work that I really like to do, and I really don't even know what I like to do. And a lot of times I would apply to some of the bigger companies in Omaha, and it was almost like, I really hope I don't get this job, and that probably carried over, and so, but long story short, I started thinking, if I'm going to open my own business, it better be something I like to do. And what do I like to do if I'm not working somewhere? Where I have a lot of free time, and I thought, well, I like to hunt and fish. I like gardening. I like just being outside. And I thought about fairly seriously about doing wildlife photography. I was even in a couple art shows and stuff with some of my work and that. But it was like, I just started looking at, like there were so many good wildlife photographers out there, and to realistically get to the point where I could make a living at it, I thought wouldn't be impossible, obviously, but it would have been a really tough hill to climb. And but one of the things I did was in my backyard when we bought our first house in Omaha suburbs, I made the backyard was a full-scale garden, and only house in blocks, or probably the only house, the immediate area anyway that had any kind of a garden. But I had my whole backyard was garden. One of the things I grew was strawberries, and I took them to where I was working at a time. It was an office job, and the people that worked there just raved about how good they tasted compared to California, store-bought strawberries. So, and I just about the same time I happened to go to the library. And there was an article in the newspaper about you-pick strawberries and how they were getting to be popular, and so I thought, well, that might be something. The thing I liked about it was, for agriculture purposes, it was like you didn't need a lot of land. 5 or 10 acres. It's a high-value crop. You could probably make a living off. You didn't need huge equipment because it was, a smaller crop or a smaller area and stuff. So I didn't need, at that time it was $100,000 combines. People probably laugh about that now, but I didn't need a $100,000 combine. I didn't need the real fancy tractors and all that kind of stuff. And I, for a kid that didn't have any agriculture background or backing or didn't inherit any land, it was pretty important to be able to start small like that. In retrospect, it was probably one of the best times I could have started because it was in the middle of the farm crisis, which
1980s.
It was right, and it was terrible because just around here there was like an auction every week.
Wow!
And I always think it is a little bit ironic that at the same time that there was a lot of very qualified people getting out of agriculture, forced to, and then you had a kid that had nothing, that didn't know anything about agriculture, getting into agriculture, and I just thought that was kind of ironic. But it's kind of like when you buy stocks in the stock market, would you rather buy them high or would you rather buy them low? And land prices were lower, and equipment prices were lower. So at the time I didn't realize this, but after thinking back at it, I was maybe a good time for me to get into agriculture in that respect.
So year number one, you're renting 17 acres, $100 an acre.
Right.
How long did it? Of course, today the name is Vala's Pumpkin Patch and Apple Orchard.
Sure.
Strawberries not on the name.
Right.
How many years did it take before you decided pumpkins were the path you wanted to kind of pursue?
Probably about 3 or 4 years. The very first year, we planted strawberries, but you plant those one year, the plugs, and then you pick them the next. You pick them, and then. And we planted a bunch of vegetables, a pretty weedy thing. I don't even remember planting pumpkins, but I planted, like in the fall, I was kind of going through the field, and I was almost surprised to see that I had some pumpkins out there. And I thought, well, I better sell these. So I picked everything that was in the field, and it fit in the back of my pickup truck. So it was like one pickup load of pumpkins. And I sold that on the side of the road. That you're just on weekends, and they were all small pumpkins, like a field trip or school group type size, and so it must have been the seed I ordered and stuff. I didn't even know what I was doing, so obviously. But the second year, I decided, they seemed to go pretty good, and I thought I could sell. But so I planted more pumpkins on purpose, and there was I planted too many. And so I got around mid-August or so, and I started looking. I said, man, I don't know if I could sell all these from the back of my pickup truck. And so I started at kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. I decided, I said, well, maybe you pick strawberries in the spring. So I had, kind of a history of bringing customers to the farm here, and I knew it could be done. And so I thought, well, maybe, people would come out and pick pumpkins, but they were out farther. Like the strawberries, I purposely planted them pretty close to the harvest barn here, so people could just walk down there and pick them and come back, But the pumpkins were out there a ways where I'd probably have to give them some kind of ride. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just give them a hayrack ride, and that would be part of my marketing plan. So I offered a free hayrack ride. We didn't charge admission. We didn't, so we just charged for the pumpkins. And I put an ad in the paper. I didn't even have a hayrack. And so I had to hurry up and try to find one, and so I could give them this ride. And we didn't have a lot of people that first year. If we had, maybe 300 or 400 people, maybe. I always make the joke because we only had parking around the harvest barn here. And it was kind of like, if we had like 10 cars, we started having a traffic jam, So we, but the big thing was, and since I was the only employee, I really got to talk to like all my strawberry customers. I got to talk to all my pumpkin customers, and I could tell with strawberries, it was always like, and this was. The hardest part about strawberries was advertising when they were ready, because we didn't have Facebook and social media. Like now you could, this is the weekend to come, pick strawberries now, they're ripe, they're ready, this is the best weekend. You could promote it. We couldn't do that. So you'd have to kind of guess a little bit and put your ad in the paper or something like that. And so we had a lot of customers complaining about, well, there's a lot of green strawberries and there's a few ripe ones, but there's a lot of green ones, and my back hurts. And then we'd have like maybe 4 or 5 days where it'd be optimum picking. And I had an early, mid, and late season varieties, but it seems like in Nebraska you get that heat in the spring or something, and they would all come together. And but they would say everyone was happy. Oh, a lot of strawberries. They taste so great. We love it, but my back hurts. And then you'd get to the point where, well, there was a lot of strawberries, but a lot of rotten ones now, and my back hurts. And so it's just that negativity going through, and it wasn't quite the family activity. Some people bring their kids out and stuff, but the kids would pick a few strawberries, and that was the experience, and that was maybe they were looking for something else. And so, but with the pumpkin thing, it seemed like the families came out. It was like the time of the year where a lot of people, that's their favorite time of the year. And they know it's going to get cold. We're going to come up with winter, and it's like their last get out in the fall and just enjoy the weather. The leaves are turning, the smells in the air and all that kind of stuff. And so it was their favorite time of the year anyway. And it was more of a family activity because you're not going to come out and pick a pumpkin by yourself. You're going to bring the kids or grandkids or something, right?
They're heavy.
And so it's more of a family thing. And I just got so much positive feedback from my customers. It's like how much fun it was, and they enjoyed it, and most of them, I would say almost every one of them, never had the experience of going out and seeing where the pumpkins were growing, and being able to go out and pick their own pumpkins like that. So it was just a unique, experience, kind of on an old farmstead. We had the harvest barn here. It's where we weighed the pumpkins, and and then as we got going, we kind of decorated the barn a little bit more and would sell trinket, like pumpkin carving kits and just different things. And then, then we started doing a little bit of food. Hand-dipped caramel apples was my mom kind of got that started. And so we just kind of grew from there. But it was mostly listening to our customers, and the difference between strawberries and pumpkins was such a huge gap that it was like I immediately knew that we were going to get out of strawberries pretty quickly and concentrate on the pumpkins. I did for 17 years, I did farm markets off-site in Omaha, selling sweet corn and tomatoes, melons, those kind of things. Probably went a little bit too long. It did help cash flow for a while. Something I learned pretty quickly starting my own business. I never even heard the term cash flow before I got started. But it's something that's real that needs to be addressed. And so the sweet corn and things really helped those early years get that cash flow, because I couldn't go to the bank and get a operational loan. I didn't have, it's like, well, I don't have any really experience, and I don't have any money, and I don't have, can I borrow some money? And it's like, it just wouldn't have worked. I knew that. So, but then after we got the business started, I started getting a little bit of a history that I could show the bankers that, hey, we're doing this, we expect this, we want to do this to improve it, and I just found that, kind of most accidentally, this used to be a dairy barn, and the farmer sold the cows right before I came out, and but he had a cow chute just outside the door. And I like to use my hands, so sorry about that. But he had a cow chute right outside of the door, and we just never moved it. It was just one of the things that we just never had time. And this was in the days before, like now we have skid loaders and all kinds of stuff. We could just pick something up. Yeah, we can, it's like, no, we need like 4 guys to kind of physically move it or something, But anyway, it was just sitting there, and as like with the pumpkins, after they'd pick pumpkins, I'd be weighing them for the parents and stuff. Well, the kids were climbing up this cow chute and jumping off of it. And they were just having a ball, and it was like it's a little bit of a jump, I thought, well, so I, the next day or two, I put in, bales of straw and hay and stuff in there, but they had the most fun just running up that cow chute and jumping off, And so, it became apparent that they wanted to do something else other than just pick pumpkins. And that's why we started doing some different things, playgrounds, activities for kids and all that kind of stuff. And pretty much everything we do, we want to do like for the families. Yeah. And we like it if the families can go together. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we started off, we had like a little spook shed right across. It was like the tractor shed that when we came, and the farmer had his big tractor stored in there and stuff. And but we fixed it, made a little spook shed for preschool age kids. I mean, it was, just kind of more fun Halloween type stuff. And we charged like $1 to go through that. And then we eventually, when we when we first came out, we had renters in our house up there, and then the last renters kind of tore it up pretty good, and we thought, well, let's make a haunted house for like grade school age kids, you know, because the grade school age kids weren't really happy with the spook shed, you know, and so we kind of got both age groups, and we charged $1.50 for the house. But then what we were noticing is that, you know, the parents would give their kids $1 or $1.50, but then they would stand out and just wait. Well, they weren't experienced the attraction with their kids, you know, which is a big deal. You want to see your kids like kind of get scared or laugh or whatever, you know, you want to see things, you know, and if you're standing out, you know, so that's when we went to a general admission price, and it was actually a better deal for the customer because they were going to pay more if they had to pay, and then they only got to go through the spook shed once. Well, when we started doing a general admission, they could go through the spook shed 5 times if they wanted to, you know, and the parents could go with them. And that was the big thing to us, is that now the parents can go with the kids and experience that with the kids and what the kids like, you know, so.
Well, let's talk about how things have changed from when you started this in the 1980s to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
You started with 5 acres of pumpkins, and now you've got, 55 out here?
Yeah, we cut back a little bit. Okay. We always grow more pumpkins than we need, because there was one year that we had a shortage of pumpkins, and we had to get a couple semi-loads of pumpkins in. We made a mistake and had them, because to save on transportation costs, if you just pack them in, it's a lot cheaper than if you have them in bins. But I think that was the most work I've ever done in my life, almost, was unloading a whole semi-load of pumpkins, you know. And I thought, it's a lot easier to plant a seed in the spring than it is to unload pumpkins, you know. And so we've really been really great. In the last probably 30 years, there was one year we didn't have a lot of school group size pumpkins that we bought, but other than that, we've always covered our pumpkins more, and to do that too, because that was the other thing I did. I got started. I didn't expand fast enough, you know. I'd put in an extra acre or 2 every year. Well, our growth was faster than that, so then I'd be always short of pumpkins towards the end of the October, and I'd have to buy some to kind of fill in for that, and so I just started planting more acres than I need, and I got more farm ground too, so that helped a lot, and so that's so we got about 45 acres.
About a 400-acre operation now that Vala's Pumpkin Patch and Apple Orchard sits on. I'm sure you went from 1 employee being yourself to now well over 1,000 seasonal employees, and you said the early years 300 to 400 people, and now some 400,000 people will flock during the fall, very seasonal business to come out to Vala's Pumpkin Patch Apple Orchard. That's incredible growth, and I think the question that I want to ask you is, what was the biggest, if you can narrow it down to one thing, what was the biggest key to your success of growing this business over the past 40 years?
We have kind of one of our core values is to reinvest into the business, and it's real easy when you get to a certain point. You kind of say, "Well, I think we're okay. This is enough," and maybe I'd like to take a trip to Europe this year or do something else. You know, I don't, whatever. And we always prioritized kind of the customer and the customer enjoyment and reinvesting in the business more than our private lives, you know. And, as the business got bigger and bigger, like the last 10 years and stuff, we've been doing a few more things now personally, but we really emphasize, like I said, like the customers came first.
Yep.
And the honor of the customers, we're charging admission and everything. We wanted to take that money and reinvest, and I think that people always, when I see people around Omaha or whenever, the Gretna and stuff, what's new this year? That's one of the biggest questions they ask. What'd you do next year? Because everyone knows that we do something new every year, and they just are always curious what we're doing, and I think that was probably the key, one of the key things, and we always wanted to keep, moving forward. There's always more opportunities, more things we can do, make it more fun for the families and kids, and it's just to make magical memories, as we call them.
You've added a lot of attractions out here, especially over the last few years, a lot of big attractions, to your point about continuing to reinvest. But what has been, as you look back, the single most important attraction that has converted this operation to this massive agritourism destination?
Sure. Well, I think we put 21 years ago this year, we put in the train. And that was probably the first, that really separated us from other farms and, made us unique, kind of, and it was so well received. And so I think that was kind of one of the turning points is just the train and on the attraction part of it. On the food part of it, 1995, we built the bakery down the hill here, and it's a timber frame construction. It was just before that we had just a real little building for our food, and we went from this really dinky building selling hot dogs and caramel apples and stuff to this pretty good sized building selling our food, and that was probably on the food side. And people love, it's kind of like you think about, I always interrupt myself, but people love the food part of it. And it's kind of like if you think about going to the Iowa State Fair or something, or the Nebraska State Fair, would you go if you didn't have any food? The food is kind of an important part of the mix. You want to have attractions, you want to have food, you want to have the whole pumpkin picking and the decorations for the fall and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a total mix.
As I'm sitting here having this conversation with you, Tim, I'm thinking about the similarities, believe it or not, between Vala's Pumpkin Patch and Apple Orchard and Memorial Stadium.
Oh, uh-huh.
Both the places sit year-round, but all the money is made seasonally in the fall.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to, the weekends that you're open, you begin kind of that first weekend in September, go through, I presume about Halloween or so.
Yeah, we usually we end October 31st.
Okay.
This year is a little bit of an exception because the November weekend's pretty close to the October 31st. So we're open a few extra days into November. And it's been funny, but our November weekends have been almost better than our October weekends the last few years. We'll see what happens this year, but I know last year we were saying, oh man, I wish we were open, because the last weekend it was really cold, like in the 20s or 30s, and so it kind of ruined that weekend, obviously. And then November it was like 70, and so it's like, oh my gosh, So, but yeah, that's pretty much. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
It's just,
does it stress you out ever having the seasonal aspect of the business?
We love the seasonal part of it. Now, my son-in-law, I'm kind of retired now, and I have 3 daughters and 2 son-in-laws, and they're taking over. And there's been some talk of maybe trying to be open in the summer a little bit and stuff. So I always thought there was so much to do yet in the fall that why spread yourself thin? And I'd rather do one thing and focus on it and do a very good job at that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really paid off for us because we, rather than trying to do, Christmas and, just being open in the summer and doing off-site things or special events. We tried weddings once, and we kind of decided we didn't like that industry. I think there's really, from a business model, they can be profitable, and something a lot of farms are getting into. It just didn't fit our farm, and the main thing was we're kind of under construction in the summertime because we're improving things. We got that continuous improvement every year, and it was always hard to kind of make your grounds look nice and for the wedding and everything's perfect, and then having construction equipment in the background, So, but just an example, I think the main thing is that we just wanted to focus on the business, on the pumpkin business.
As I look at agritourism destinations across the heartland, and certainly Vala's Pumpkin Patch and Apple Orchard, you all have been the leader. You have kind of set the standard, and a lot of people have seen the success you've had and have invested in things like a pumpkin patch and experience-based activities for families, especially around the population centers across the Midwest. That has to, you have a certain level of expectations to continue to improve, and you talked about investing in the business. Where do you come up with new ideas?
We belong to two organizations. We've only been going to one the last few years, but it's called the Maze. But it's made up of, last year they had like 500 farms or something at their convention. They have a convention every year at different parts of the country. So it's but they always have, different things. We belong to a study group, 6 other farms, and we usually get together in the summer and kind of go different places every year and kind of what flew, what flopped type thing with their farms. And we go to a couple conventions. There's a convention down in Orlando. It's an amusement park convention. And then we go to like the Michigan has a fruit and vegetable growers. But they do a lot on growing this stuff, but they also usually have a track on marketing or entertainment and stuff. So, and just meeting other people in the industry. In fact, we got another farm coming here today from over in Cedar Rapids, Iowa area that just wants to tour our farm and see things. And our industry is kind of unique in that, most of the people are really friendly and willing to help and share ideas. And it's just, I don't know, there's some industries that aren't like that, I guess, and ours is unique in that aspect. So,
well, let's talk about where the business is today, ownership-wise. You mentioned you're retiring. You've got 3 daughters, 2 son-in-laws involved. How has that transition been? Somebody who founded the business, is it hard to step away from the day-to-day?
It is, but but physically, I could see. I feel older too. So I mean, I think it's happened at the right time, and it's and I'm just happy that because we have friends that have businesses like mine where the kids don't want to come back in. They have one becomes a lawyer, and another one becomes a doctor or other thing. And they don't want to come back into the business, and then. It's almost an impossible business to sell, so it pretty much you have to auction off everything piece by piece and auction off the land and stuff. And I would have just hated to see that, after, building the business and putting, the buildings and all the barns and everything we have, and then have that all just get bulldozed down would have been pretty disheartening. And, so I'm happy. All 3 daughters came back, and I got 2 son-in-laws as a bonus. And so, and even growing up, my 3 daughters always got along pretty good. And I know there's a lot of sibling problems, and I know some other farms that have, pretty major problems with, the kids don't liking each other, and for whatever reason, and my 3 daughters always got along, and it's still a little tough, we always have to be conscientious of what we're doing, and kind of try to make sure everyone's happy or understands. If we take a stance and someone's against it, this is why we're doing it. And we have a family meeting every week, and we always say it's going to be like 45 minutes to an hour, and it's usually an hour and a half to 2 hours. But I think it's been huge on talking about things, talking through things, everyone knowing what the expectations are. Everyone, usually at the end of the meeting we have rocks is what we call them, but what's your rocks? I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. And then the next meeting we go, okay, here's your rocks. How are you doing on this, that? And that's like, well, it's done, or I'm working on it. The progress is good, but I'm not quite done with that yet. But we just keeping that communications going, I think, is huge.
When it comes to somebody enjoying this podcast today, somebody who wants to be in the entrepreneurship space, perhaps interested in a seasonal business, what advice would you give them?
Well, it's like, again, like just even when I got started, it's like, well, just sit down and be real honest with yourself. What do you really like to do if you're not working, is the way I put it. There might be better ways, but it's like, do you have a hobby already, or is there something that you're just a little bit passionate about? And everyone's different, there's no right or wrong. And then try to figure out how you can make a living doing that, so it's hard, but that's how I got started anyway. And that's, I'm not a business expert by any means, but that's how we got started.
What do you hope the legacy of yours will be?
Well, we like to just see Vala's go on, for generations down the lane. I'm hoping I have 5 grandkids, so I'm hoping a couple of those will come back into the business anyway. I think it's important, like with my 3 daughters, I sat down with them when I was 55 and told them I was, by the time I'm 65, I'll probably want to start retiring, and you guys have an opportunity. It's you don't have to take the opportunity. You're lucky that you have an opportunity, because not all kids have an opportunity to take over the family business. But I said, we're going to love you no matter what. If you decide to go a different route, we'll support you and love you, and whatever. We want you to be happy and not be forced to come back in. And that's what we'll do with our grandkids too. And so I'm hoping the grandkids will take over, and go from there.
What's brought you the most joy running Vala's Pumpkin Patch and Apple Orchard?
What do I most enjoy?
Well, what's brought you the most joy over the past 40 years?
Well, it has to be the customers and also my staff. We got such a great staff, full time and the seasonal ones that come in, and I've had like even the last month or two, a couple of my full-time staff say, this is the best job I've ever had, and that makes me feel real good, because I'm not only, I didn't only create a business for me, but for others too, that we can all enjoy, and just being outside and working on things and seeing you're making progress. And what you're doing is going to make people happy. You're going to create, kids are going to laugh and families are going to be together and all that. And so, and that's the whole reason why we started the business, is other than strawberries, it's more like just making good strawberries to eat. But once we started the pumpkin part, the focus kind of changed, and let's make people happy, make magical memories, family time, and families are so important in America, and we just need to keep promoting that, and I think sometimes that gets lost a little bit. And then kids can spend so much time on their iPhones or iPads, and they're not in the real world. So coming out here and seeing an old homestead farm and barns and some of that stuff, it's just, to me, it just brings them back to nature. And they actually have some playgrounds they can play and run around and be kids, be kids.
Well, congratulations on 40 years, everything you've built out here.
Well, thank you.
I couldn't be more grateful for you for sitting down with us, sharing your story as part of the Building Nebraska podcast. Thank you very much for doing so.
Yeah, well, it's been an honor, and thank you.
Tim Vala, our guest today as part of the Building Nebraska podcast. It's a podcast for dreamers and doers alike, proudly powered by the Angler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We'll see you back here next time.